Princess Velora had always known her life would not belong to her. In the Thalian Empire, royal daughters were not raised for love or dreams. They were raised to be symbols, treaties, and sacrifices. Her marriage was only another example. When the Empire announced a diplomatic union with a small new species called humans, she had not even been surprised. She only bowed her head, gave the proper salute to the Emperor, and accepted her role. That was what a princess did. She read about humans before meeting her husband. The reports described them as emotional, short-lived, and weak by genetic standards. Their homeworld, Earth, was considered primitive, their technology young, and their fleet embarrassingly small. Many alien species mocked them as the children of the stars. They had only just begun space travel compared to the ancient races of the galaxy. Velora did not dislike them. She simply did not expect much. She imagined her future husband as quiet, nervous, and a little overwhelmed. Perhaps he would stare wide-eyed at the grand crystalline halls of the Thalian royal palace. Perhaps he would smile too often in an attempt to please her. She had already resigned herself to a boring life, with a husband who would be obedient, respectful, and politically useful. It was not romantic, but romance had no place in royal life. The day Marcus Hale arrived, Velora prepared herself for polite disappointment. She stood in the reception hall, in her ceremonial armor of silver and pale blue, surrounded by guards and advisors. Her expression was calm, composed, trained to show nothing. She watched the tall doors slide open as the human ambassador stepped inside. Marcus was not what she expected. He was calm, yes. Polite, yes. But not nervous at all. His eyes did not dart around in awe. His posture was relaxed without being disrespectful. His expression showed quiet observation rather than fear or confusion. He walked with the ease of someone who knew exactly who he was, even if others did not. Velora studied him silently. He was not genetically enhanced like Thalians. No advanced exoskeleton. No plasma-infused armor. Just a simple dark formal uniform with a small silver United Terran emblem on the chest. His hair was black, his skin lightly tanned, his eyes sharp and cool. He looked ordinary, yet composed enough that it was difficult to dismiss him entirely. When he reached her, Marcus bowed with a perfect diplomatic angle. Not too low, not too arrogant. Exactly the correct gesture. That surprised her more than anything else. Most foreign ambassadors either bowed too deeply to impress the Empire or too shallowly out of pride. But Marcus had done neither. He simply showed respect and nothing more. "It is an honor, Princess Velora," he said in smooth, measured words. "I thank you for receiving me." His voice was not loud, not challenging, but firm. Velora nodded. "Welcome to Thalia. We trust your journey was acceptable." "Very smooth," Marcus replied. "Your transport vessels are impressive." She had expected him to make a mistake, to gush too much or act too humble. Yet he remained perfectly controlled. It made her curious, if only a little. The advisors, standing behind her, gave each other looks. They had also expected a simple, overwhelmed human. Marcus was led through the palace, and Velora walked beside him, explaining pieces of artwork, history, and architecture. He listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and never rambled. He did not try to impress her with stories or jokes. He simply learned. For the first time, Velora found herself at a loss for judgment. He was not remarkable in strength or status. Yet there was something steady in him, like a quiet engine running beneath calm water. Their official marriage ceremony took place the next day. It was a grand affair with floating banners, shimmering glass floors, and dignitaries from half the star systems in the Empire. The Emperor himself oversaw the ritual, and Marcus performed every motion with precision, never needing correction. If he was nervous, he did not show it. After the ceremony, they attended their first royal dinner together. It was a massive circular hall filled with alien nobles, generals, and senators. Many of them whispered behind jeweled masks or drank sparkling plasma wine while discussing political matters. Marcus sat beside Valora, listening with the polite silence of a man cautious not to overstep. The senators spoke openly, assuming the human lacked understanding of their language or their political jargon. They discussed interplanetary resource fights, military deployments, and secret alliances. They unmasked more of Thalia's weaknesses in one dinner conversation than Valora had heard in months. Marcus said nothing. He only listened, taking in every detail. Even his eyes seemed to record information without visible reaction. Valora noticed. "You are very quiet," she said softly. Marcus turned his head slightly toward her. "When I do not yet understand every aspect of a situation, I listen. It is easier to see the truth when one does not interrupt it." It was a simple answer, but it stayed in her mind long after the dinner ended. Later, in their private living quarters, Marcus began arranging his belongings. Nothing extravagant. A simple data pad, a case with basic personal items, and a thin notebook made from real paper. Valora watched as he unpacked with calm, efficient movements. "You may request any amenities," she told him. "If you require better furniture, or communication terminals, or assistance, the palace will provide them." Marcus shook his head. "This is enough. I prefer to work quietly." "You do not seem overwhelmed," Valora said finally. She did not ask it unkindly. She was simply curious. Marcus smiled slightly. "Humans have a saying. The universe does not care about the size of your fleet, only the strength of your resolve." Her brows lifted. "An optimistic view." "It has kept us alive," Marcus replied. Valora did not know what he meant by that. Humans were young, their wars were small, their threats minor. But something in the way he said it, steady and without drama, made her pause. When Marcus slept, she walked through the palace balcony, staring at the glowing nebula sky. She told herself she should feel relief. Her husband was what she expected. Polite, calm, and safe. He would not disrupt the empire or demand power. He would be content in his role. He would follow her silence with silence. And yet, she could not shake a quiet thought. Marcus Hale was not harmless, only quiet. Quiet could be many things. A river before a flood, a soldier before a decisive strike, a strategist before a plan. She dismissed the thought with a gentle sigh, telling herself she was imagining shadows where none existed. Humans, after all, were not a great galactic power. They were just beginning. Their fleets were small, their colonies limited, their strength uncertain. The Empire had nothing to fear from them, or so everyone believed. Valora returned indoors and extinguished the lights. Marcus slept with the calmness of a man without stress. She watched him for a moment, then lay down beside him. She did not know that humanity was already preparing for survival in ways the Empire could not imagine. She did not know that Marcus had already started gathering information, mapping power structures, and studying weaknesses. She did not know that behind his quiet eyes, a sharp mind was calculating every possibility. She only knew that her future husband seemed gentle, harmless, and normal. And the galaxy would soon learn how wrong those assumptions were. Weeks passed, and life in the palace settled into a smooth routine. Marcus attended diplomatic meetings, always calm, always listening, more than speaking. The nobles grew comfortable around him. They spoke freely, assuming humans were too inexperienced to understand the complex power games of the Empire. Marcus continued to study quietly, storing every detail in his mind without a hint of ambition or threat. Princess Valora noticed, but she did not think too deeply about it. She had grown used to Marcus's quiet presence. He was respectful, intelligent, and never tried to impress her. He showed curiosity about Thalian culture and history, but never pushed himself into leadership. Servants began to relax in his presence. Guards barely paid attention to him. Even the Emperor believed him harmless. That was the general idea. Humans were small, inexperienced, and no danger to anyone. On a quiet evening, Velora and Marcus shared a simple dinner together. It was not a romantic moment, but there was comfort in it. Marcus listened, while Velora described her childhood lessons in diplomacy and combat. He smiled softly. "You have lived under pressure for a long time," he said. "As all royal children must," she replied, taking a slow drink of crystal blue wine. "Duty is the foundation of the empire." Marcus understood that, but he did not say so. He only nodded, and the moment passed. Then, one night, everything changed. Marcus and Velora were in their room when the palace alarms suddenly activated. Blue lights flashed across the halls, and a deep warning tone vibrated through the air. Guards rushed toward strategic stations, shouting orders. Marcus stood from his chair, calmly, but with immediate alertness. Velora placed her hand on a panel, bringing up the emergency screen. A royal officer appeared, armor scratched and voice tense. "Your Highness, urgent transmission from the outer colonies. Human settlements have been attacked." Marcus's blood went cold. "Attacked by who?" "Separatists," the officer answered. "A Thalian faction. They struck multiple colonies and destroyed several human orbital bases." Marcus stared at the screen, but his eyes were not wide with panic. They were sharp, focused, and hard. The officer continued. "The Separatists have issued a statement demanding extermination of human presence in Empire territory. They call humanity a contagion." Velora's breath caught. She felt shock and shame rise inside her. Thalians rarely showed open aggression toward a weak allied species, especially during peacetime. Even if humans were not equal in power, this attack was unjust. She looked at Marcus, expecting fear, anger, or confusion. But Marcus did not shout. He did not tremble. He simply stood straighter, and his voice dropped into a tone that was almost too calm. "How many casualties?" he asked quietly. The officer swallowed. "Reports still coming. It looks severe." Marcus nodded once. "I want access to the communication room." Before Velora could agree, a new tone sounded in the palace network. A mass broadcast began, visible across the public screens. It was the Emperor himself, addressing the Empire. Velora and Marcus turned as the Emperor's image appeared. His expression was composed, almost uninterested. "The recent incident involving human colonies is regrettable," he said. "However, the separatist movement is an internal matter. The Empire will not escalate into a civil conflict over an emerging species." Marcus stared at the screen, unblinking. The Emperor continued. "Earth must understand that frontier territory carries risks. We recommend they strengthen their defenses." Then he ended the broadcast. Marcus did not move for several seconds. Velora's heart twisted painfully. She knew what the Emperor had done. He was refusing responsibility. He was sacrificing human lives for political stability. That was common in imperial strategy. But this time, she felt something deeper, something like guilt. She looked at Marcus again. His face was calm, too calm. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and cold. "They invaded the wrong species." Velora felt something in her pulse skip. It was not the words alone, it was the way he spoke them. There was no shouting, no dramatic anger. Just a simple promise, as if a decision had already been made deep inside him. A group of nobles entered the hallway soon after, talking loudly. They treated the event like a minor inconvenience. Some even laughed at the notion that humans could respond to a military strike. "What can Earth do?" one noble scoffed. "Throw rocks at our battleships?" Another added, "They should be grateful the Emperor even acknowledged them." Marcus walked past them without slowing. He did not look angry, but the guards who saw him felt something dangerous in the air, like a pressure change before a storm. Velora followed him into the palace communication center. Several officers stood at control stations. Data flashed across the screens: destroyed colonies, loss reports, damaged fleets, emergency messages from surviving human commanders. A young officer turned. "Ambassador Hale, we will provide a statement to Earth within the hour." Marcus leaned over the table, his eyes scanning the reports silently. Velora spoke softly. "Marcus, I know this is difficult." He cut her off, gently but firmly. "Please open secure diplomatic lines to United Terran Command." The officers hesitated. "We require the Emperor's—" Velora stepped forward, her voice sharp. "I authorize it under Royal Emergency Clause." "Do it now." The officers obeyed. A Terran hologram appeared, an admiral in battle-worn armor. His eyes widened when he saw Marcus. "Ambassador, we feared you might be dead." Marcus spoke without pause. "Admiral, give me the situation." The admiral breathed out. 3 colonies destroyed. 7 more under attack. Civilian casualties heavy. We are mobilizing every defense fleet available. Marcus processed this, then asked, "Have you revealed our classified assets?" "Not yet," the admiral answered. "We were waiting for orders." Marcus closed his eyes for one moment. When he opened them, the softness was gone. His voice was stronger than Velora had ever heard. "Release them. Everything." The admiral nodded once. "Understood. Operation Iron Wake begins immediately." The screen cut off. One of the Thalian officers frowned in confusion. "Release what? Earth? Has nothing capable of—" Marcus looked at him, expression unreadable. "Humanity has spent centuries preparing for extinction. You simply never saw it." Then he walked out of the room, leaving stunned silence behind him. Velora followed, her steps quick. "Marcus, I need to understand." He stopped and turned to her. His eyes were not angry, but they were filled with something fierce and unshakable. "When humans are threatened, we do not submit. We survive. We fight. We learn. And we do not stop." Velora could only stare. She had never seen a human look like that, not small, not weak, not harmless. Marcus continued. "I remained quiet, because peace was possible. But peace is gone." Velora felt a chill run through her. She understood now that the galaxy's image of humans was dangerously incomplete. They had mistaken silence for weakness, diplomacy for surrender, and patience for fear. They had no idea what humanity had been building in the shadows of history. Velora realized something else: Marcus had not changed in this moment. He had been this person the entire time. She simply had not seen it. The alarms continued ringing throughout the palace. Officers ran, reports flooded the screens, and the first signs of a new war spread across the Empire. Humanity was no longer the quiet new species of the galaxy. They were awakening. Across the galaxy, news spread faster than plasma fire. Most alien governments expected humanity to panic, retreat, or beg for protection. Humans had small fleets and few colonies compared to the ancient powers of the stars. They were expected to lose quickly and silently. But the opposite happened. Within hours of Marcus giving the order, Earth changed. Every hidden program, every secret project, every military asset that humanity had quietly built came alive. The United Terran Navy, once believed weak and outdated, revealed a new form of war machine the galaxy had never seen before. Human engineers had understood something simple. They could not win through size or numbers. The Empire was massive. The Separatists alone had fleets twice as large as all Terran forces combined. But humans had studied their enemy carefully, and they built weapons designed not for show, but for survival. In the command chambers of Earth, Officers loaded the first kinetic destroyers into warships. These weapons did not use plasma beams or energy cannons. They used simple, brutal physics. Massive tungsten rods launched at extreme speeds. No shield could fully stop that kind of impact. One strike could tear battleships in half. No one outside Earth had taken them seriously until now. The first Terran warship fleet jumped into Separatist-controlled space. The Separatists expected a small show of resistance. Maybe a warning shot. Maybe a retreat. Instead, they were destroyed in 7 minutes. The kinetic rods punched through their armor like holes in paper. Their command ship split open in two as the main weapon tore through it. The battle was efficient, controlled, and terrifyingly quiet. No grand speeches, no dramatic announcements, just results. The surviving Separatist officers sent panicked transmissions across the sector. The messages spread everywhere. Human fleet unknown technology request backup. Shields failing can't stop. How are they doing this? The humans have super weapons. Suddenly, no one in the galaxy was laughing anymore. In the Thalian palace, royal screens lit up with battle footage. Nobles stared, pale and speechless, as human ships advanced like silent machines of vengeance. Some Thalian generals muttered in disbelief. This cannot be possible. Their industry is too small. The Empire's intelligence must have missed something. Valora stood among them, watching the footage with growing shock. She had known humans were underestimated, but not like this. She had never imagined humanity was holding back so much. She looked across the war room, searching for Marcus. He stood near one of the projected star maps, speaking calmly with Thalian officers. His voice remained steady, but every word held weight. Our forces are securing evacuation corridors for surviving colonies. Civilian extraction takes priority over retaliation. A Thalian admiral narrowed his eyes. You could strike deeper. You could crush the Separatist fleet entirely. Marcus shook his head slightly. Victory means nothing if we lose our people. War is not about territory. It is about survival. Valora watched him, feeling a strange mix of pride and fear. For the first time, she understood that humans did not fight for power or glory. They fought because a small mistake could wipe them out. A small species did not have the luxury of endless population or territory. They learned to strike fast, precisely, and with a focus that terrified larger empires. When the map updated again, another shock rippled through the command center. A fleet of automated Terran defense stations had activated around Earth. Each station was linked through an AI network with pinpoint accuracy. Even Thalian military scientists stared at the data in disbelief. These systems, this coordination, how did they develop this without detection? Marcus answered simply. We assumed no one would save us, so we prepared. His voice carried no anger, no boastfulness. Only truth. Meanwhile, Separatist leaders gathered in their own war chambers, shaken and furious. They had believed the attack would be easy, a quick slaughter of a primitive species to rally support against the Emperor. Instead, their fleets were burning, their territories falling, and their soldiers begging for support. One of their high commanders slammed his hand on the table. How can humans fight like this? Another growled. We underestimated them. And their ambassador is inside the palace, feeding them information. They were wrong. Marcus had given humanity everything they needed long before the marriage. He had studied the Empire with quiet patience, never drawing attention. His silence had been their downfall. Back in the Thalian palace, Marcus finally received a private message from Earth. The hologram of the Terran admiral returned. Armor scorched, but face determined. We secured 3 colonies. Casualties were high, but we saved who we could. Sir, the people are angry. They want to push deeper. Finish this quickly. Marcus nodded slowly. Do not let anger decide strategy. A rushed victory becomes a slow defeat. Valora listened and realized something else. Marcus spoke with the authority of a commander, not a politician. He was not just a diplomat. He was someone born to lead in crisis. When the communication ended, Marcus walked toward the palace balcony. Valora followed silently. Outside, the nebulous skies glowed with distant starlight. Below them, the capital world pulsed with activity. Thousands of ships took off, landing, preparing for possible war. Marcus rested his hands on the balcony rail, staring into the stars. You planned for this. Marcus did not deny it. He spoke softly, as if explaining something simple. Human history is full of times when we were almost destroyed. Diseases, famines, wars. We learned that hope is not a plan. Preparation is. Valora looked at him. But you came here peacefully. And I meant every peaceful word, Marcus replied. If the Empire had honored its alliance, we would be standing together now. He turned his head slightly. But when someone tries to erase your people, you stop asking for permission to survive. Valora felt a heavy truth settle in her chest. She had always believed strength came from tradition, numbers, and technology. But humans were proving something different. Strength could come from desperation, focus, and the refusal to surrender. A guard arrived, saluting sharply. Ambassador Hale, the Emperor has summoned you to the War Council. Marcus nodded and followed without hesitation. Valora went with him. Inside the war chamber, the Emperor stood tall, surrounded by nobles and generals. His expression was unreadable. When Marcus entered, some nobles turned away, refusing to meet his eyes. Others stared at him with a new fear. The Emperor spoke first. Ambassador Hale, your people have reacted strongly. Marcus answered evenly. They reacted appropriately. A low murmur spread across the room. One general spoke sharply. You risk escalating this conflict into civil war. End quote. 8. Town work. Marcus met his stare. The conflict began when your own people slaughtered civilians. Another noble scoffed. Humans should have accepted their losses as the cost of expansion. Marcus stepped forward, his voice quiet but unshakable. We are a young species. We do not have millions of colonies to lose. Every life matters. Valora suddenly understood something. The nobles were not only surprised by humanity's strength, they were shocked by the idea that a government would actually protect its people before its pride. To Marcus, this was normal. To the Thalians, it was almost strange. The Emperor raised a hand for silence. We must now decide how the Empire responds. If the Separatists are crushed by humans alone, the government loses its authority. Marcus looked at him calmly. Then, stand with us. A hush dropped over the chamber. In that moment, humanity was no longer a minor species asking for recognition. They were a force, offering alliance and warning. The galaxy had changed, and everyone in that room felt it. The war chamber was silent after Marcus spoke. His suggestion was impossible by Thalian standards. A small young species offering alliance as an equal to one of the oldest empires in the galaxy? Many nobles looked stunned. Others looked offended. A few looked frightened. The Emperor watched Marcus carefully, his golden eyes sharp. He had expected a human diplomat to plead for help, maybe even beg. Instead, Marcus stood tall, calm, and collected, offering a military partnership as though he had commanded empires all his life. One general finally laughed, unable to restrain himself. You want the Thalian Empire to stand beside a minor planet with barely a dozen colonies? You have destroyed a few separatist fleets and now believe yourself our equal? Marcus did not respond to the insult. He only asked, how many of your fleets are in position to defend against a full separatist uprising? The general stopped laughing. Marcus pressed a button on the holographic control panel. A star map lit up. It showed supply routes, military positions, fuel reserves, and production centers, every detail classified as high command information. Valora felt the bottom of her stomach drop. This was not information Marcus could have picked up by casual observation. He had been quietly gathering for weeks. The nobles stared at the display, some turning pale. Marcus spoke evenly, as though giving a basic briefing. Your third fleet is stationed on the far border, where it cannot respond in time. Your supply lines are stretched thin. Your defensive relay stations are aging. Your communication network has single points of failure, and the Separatists know all of this. Silence swept the chamber. Marcus continued, tapping on a section of the map. Within 2 weeks, the Separatists could cut off your outer sectors, seize essential shipyards, and divide the Empire. Humanity's attack only exposed the weakness sooner. A noble slammed his hand on the table. How did you learn this information? Marcus finally looked up from the map. By listening. Your nobles speak freely because they believe humans simple. Your military reports circulate without encryption because you assume no outsider will understand them. I did not need to spy. I only needed to pay attention. A ripple of uncomfortable realization passed through the chamber. Many of the nobles exchanged uneasy glances. They had assumed Marcus harmless, but he had been studying them from the moment he arrived. The Emperor stepped forward, his voice controlled but carrying the weight of authority. Ambassador Hale, are you threatening the Empire? Marcus shook his head. No, Your Majesty. I am stating the truth. If the Empire does not act now, it will face collapse from inside. Humanity will survive this war. The question is whether Thalia will survive as well. Valora watched her husband speak, and something inside her shifted. She had married a man she believed gentle and unimportant. Now, she saw a commander capable of shaking an empire with words alone. She felt both pride and fear. Not fear of him, but fear of how blind the Empire had been. The Emperor's expression was unreadable. And what do you suggest? Marcus turned to the map. A joint command. Combined strategic operations. Humans have technology and tactics the Separatists have never encountered. Thalia has numbers, territory, and centuries of experience. Together, we can end this conflict quickly. One general spoke sharply. If we follow a human plan and fail, the Empire will look weak. Marcus looked at him calmly. You already look weak. The Separatists proved that when they slaughtered civilians under your flag, the general rose in anger, but the Emperor raised his hand. The room went still again. Marcus continued in the same calm voice. The Empire is respected, but that respect is fading. The Separatists attacked because they believed the Empire would be passive. And until now, they have been correct. Another noble, older and more thoughtful, leaned forward. Assuming we agree, why should we trust humans? You are young. You are desperate. Marcus nodded. Yes, and desperate species are dangerous. We cannot afford arrogance or hesitation. We innovate because we must. We fight with everything, because losing means extinction. That makes us reliable allies and terrible enemies. His words hit the room like a shockwave. No shouting, no softness, just simple truth. The Emperor studied Marcus for a long moment. Then he said, "Leave us. I must discuss this privately with my council." Marcus bowed slightly and stepped out. Valora left with him. When the doors closed, she finally spoke. You planned this from the beginning. Marcus walked slowly down the long corridor. I always hoped this moment would never come. Peace was the perfect outcome. But humans do not survive by hoping. We survive by preparing. Valora moved in front of him, forcing him to stop. She searched his face. People here think you are cold. Marcus exhaled softly. I am not cold. I am afraid. I just refuse to let fear decide my actions." That surprised her. She never imagined he would admit such a thing. In Thalian culture, rulers and commanders never spoke of fear. Yet Marcus said it without shame. Maybe that was another human difference. They did not pretend to be perfect. They survived by accepting their weaknesses. Before she could answer, a young officer rushed toward them. "Princess! Ambassador! Emergency report from the Terran front!" Marcus and Valora followed him to a communication room. A hologram flickered to life, showing the Terran admiral again. His armor was scorched, and alarms flashed behind him. The man saluted sharply. "Ambassador, the Separatists have launched a counterattack. 5 fleets. We are outnumbered 5-1. They are bringing capital ships." Valora gasped. Marcus's voice stayed steady. "How many civilians remain?" "Too many," the admiral said bitterly. "Evacuation is still in process. We cannot retreat." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Then he spoke with absolute clarity. "Hold the line. Reinforcements are coming." Valora looked at him, surprised. Only the Emperor could promise reinforcements. But Marcus sounded certain. The Emperor appeared behind them moments later, surrounded by royal guards. He spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You have made your point, Ambassador Hale. The Empire cannot ignore this war any longer." The generals behind him looked displeased, but none dared speak. The Emperor continued. "We will send 3 battle fleets to support the humans. Joint command begins immediately." Marcus nodded once, without showing relief or triumph. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Emperor studied Marcus with new respect and caution. "Do not make me regret this." Marcus replied, "I will not fail." With that, the palace exploded into organized chaos. Officers sprinted to their stations. Communication channels activated. Fleets began mobilizing. For the first time in decades, the Empire was preparing for a real war. Valora walked beside Marcus as he headed to the command center. She spoke softly, but with sincere curiosity. "Did you know the Emperor would agree?" Marcus shook his head. "No, but I knew he had to decide between pride and survival. Good rulers choose survival." They entered the massive command hall. Screens showed Terran fleets holding the line. Burning ships, flashing weapon signatures, and emergency signals. Marcus stepped up to the main control display and began issuing coordinated strategic adjustments. Officers who once ignored him now watched his instructions like students before a master. One Thalian commander whispered to another, "How did we not see this coming?" Another replied quietly, "Because we were blind to anything not shaped like ourselves." Valora stood at Marcus's side. In that moment, the entire galaxy shifted. The quiet human husband, once dismissed as harmless, now guided the war efforts of an entire empire. The Separatists had expected a weak, frightened species. Instead, they had awakened the wrath of humanity. And Marcus Hale was its voice. Marcus stood in the great council hall of the Thalian Empire. The room was made of bright crystal walls that shone with blue light, and thousands of political leaders watched him in complete silence. Only a few months ago, these leaders had laughed at him. They thought humans were simple creatures from a small world. Now, they sat with straight backs, tense faces, and fear in their eyes. Valora stood beside Marcus. She was no longer the quiet princess with little voice in the empire. Her presence carried power now. People listened to her. She had fought with Marcus in the war, traveled with him, and learned the strength of humanity with her own eyes. She had seen how humans did not fight out of pride or greed. They fought because they refused to lose what they loved. That kind of fire had spread through her too. The separatist faction that started the war was almost destroyed. Their fleets had been hunted down by the joint human and Thalian forces. Many rebel leaders had surrendered. Others had fallen in battle. And only a few still hid in the outer sectors. Everyone believed the war was close to ending. But the political storm inside the empire was only growing worse. The Thalian emperor feared the change Marcus represented. Humanity had risen too fast. Their power now spread across the empire, and even Thalian soldiers respected them. The emperor's control cracked day by day. Marcus spoke with a calm voice. He was not angry. He was not emotional. He never needed to be. His words were enough. He explained the final stage of the war, how the last separatist fortress needed to be taken, and how the empire must act as one. He gave data, predictions, tactical maps, and the clean logic of someone who planned far ahead. When he finished speaking, the room was silent. Then the emperor stood. He was a tall man, with golden armor and cold eyes full of old pride. He looked down at Marcus like a king judging a criminal. "You have spoken enough," he said loudly. "This council will no longer allow a human outsider to decide the future of the empire." There were gasps in the room. Soldiers stepped forward and surrounded Marcus. The emperor lifted a hand and pointed at him. "Marcus Hale, you are under arrest for treason. You came here as a husband and ambassador, but instead you have become a military ruler. You have infected our army with human thinking and guided them to follow you. This will end now." Velora stepped forward at once. Her voice was louder than anyone had ever heard before. "You dare arrest him when he saved the empire? Without him, we would still be losing the war. Without him, the separatists would control half our space." The emperor looked at her with disappointment, like a father looking at a child who disobeyed. "You are blinded by loyalty to this human. You forget your duty to your own people." But before he could order the soldiers to seize Marcus, something unexpected happened. None of the soldiers moved. They did not step forward. They did not touch Marcus. Their eyes flicked upward, receiving new orders through their implants. Across the hall, communication screens flashed as new messages arrived. The military branches were no longer following the emperor. A senator stood and shouted, "The fleet admirals have confirmed they follow the joint command system. Their orders now come from Prince Consort Marcus Hale and Princess Velora." The emperor froze. He could not believe what he heard. For hundreds of years, the Thalian throne had controlled the military. It was the heart of imperial power. Now that heart had shifted without his command. Marcus looked at the emperor, calm as ever. He had known this moment might come. He had not stolen the army. He had earned its respect. He had fought beside the soldiers, saved their lives, and shared strategy that prevented wasteful deaths. Admirals and captains trusted him because he made sure they had futures to return to. "Your soldiers are loyal," Marcus said softly. "They simply no longer believe your decisions keep the empire safe." The emperor tried to stand stronger, but for the first time he looked old and uncertain. He tried to speak, but Velora spoke first. "The empire has changed," she said. "The people now understand that equality builds strength, not weakness. Humanity is no longer a small race, surviving quietly in the corner of the galaxy. They are our allies. They are our partners. And we must build the future with them, not against them." Some leaders nodded. Others stayed silent. But none dared deny the truth. The emperor closed his eyes. He understood his rule was over. If he tried to resist, the empire would fall into civil war, and everyone would lose. Slowly, he removed the golden crown from his head. The hall grew silent as he placed it on the crystal floor. "I abdicate," he said. The announcement shook the room. For the first time in centuries, the Thalian Empire had no ruler. Velora stepped forward, her voice steady. "I will take the throne, but not alone. We will rule together. A new age, with both our people." Marcus turned to the audience, and for the first time since arriving in the Empire, he allowed himself to show emotion. Not anger, not vengeance. Relief. Hope. The war had been terrible, but something greater had been born from it. Days later, the last separatist fortress fell. The war officially ended. Celebration flooded both Earth and the Thalian homeworld. Statues were built, poems written, and songs sung. Humans and Thalians marched together in victory processions. Children from both species played in the streets without fear of the other. Marcus and Valora began reorganizing the Empire's systems. They created open trade, shared research, and allowed both species to join each other's governments. Humans gained representation in the Galactic Senate. Thalian officers trained on Earth academies. The two sides learned from each other, and progress grew faster than anyone imagined. Historians later said something simple and true. The galaxy changed because one human remained patient until the moment he needed to unleash his power. They said that humanity always looked harmless from the outside, but once threatened, they became something unstoppable. Marcus had never wanted to rule. He only wanted to protect those he loved and those who had trusted him. But through that, he became the architect of a new age. And the galaxy never made the mistake of underestimating humans again.